here where we get a lot of parents and students to come and share their questions, and we have experts from various areas to come and talk to you about what their understanding of the various aspects of career and college guidance are. So thank you for joining. We've seen some of your comments and questions that you've already put in, where you do have a lot of curiosity about the various different areas. So quickly, without wasting too much time, I'll tell you a little bit about us and a little bit about the webinar, and then start off, right? So we're a career and college guidance firm. We work with students across all the leading destinations in the world, which is essentially US, Canada, UK, Ireland, and some of Europe, Singapore, Hong Kong, and India. You would not have heard Australia because that's not one of our areas of expertise, but almost everywhere else we've worked with a number of students across different areas, helping them find both their path as well as exactly how to go about the process and what to expect when they go through it. Now, this webinar we've curated and put together the best countries to study in, which we call the top 5 study destinations. And what we'll do the rest of this webinar is really help you understand why these are the top 5 study destinations, right? And why we figured out that these are really the top 5, having worked with students across different destinations, right? So our webinar, yeah, request you guys to keep you on yourself on mute, unless you have a question, which we'll have lots of moments and time for. You can also put your questions in the chat if you have something that you want to ask, right? Okay, so like I said, we've curated this webinar based on our experience and understanding of what are the top 5 study destinations for students in India today, based on the 4 most important aspects of a study destination. One is, of course, the reputation of the education and the universities, the quality of education. The second is prospects, which is how do you get jobs, what is the potential of jobs over there. The third is visa processes, because a lot of the times people want to study and then go and settle over there and work in the destination where they've been studying. And so what processes, what visa processes, what immigration processes do these countries offer? And finally, of course, the cost analysis, sort of like a cost return on investment, that how much do you put in and what do you get out of it? So roughly that's the overview of what we'll be looking at across various countries today. I'll run you through an agenda at the end of my session. So I'll just start off with giving you an overview of all these 5 destinations and sort of give you an understanding of why they're so interesting. And then we will take off with particular sessions for today. In the morning, we'll have a session on US and Canada. And in the afternoon, 4 p.m. onwards, we have Germany, Ireland, and UK, right? So I'm now just going to run you through our morning agenda and give you an overview of all the sessions, and then we start off with the session on the US. So, like I said, you're free to just put questions in the chat that we can refer to and answer. Also, we'll have breaks in the middle, which would be Q&A breaks, where you can unmute yourself and ask a question, or we can just pick up the questions you put in the chat and we can try and respond to those. Apart from questions, we'll also be grateful for any insights you yourself have in these areas and destinations, or what your experience has been, and everybody can learn from that. All right, so as you can see here are the 5 study destinations that we've chosen, essentially US, Canada, UK, Germany, and Ireland. And we're just about to tell you why. So let's start with the big and the biggest and the most popular destination for all students across the world, which is the USA. And there are very, very good reasons for it. Of course, there are challenges, but if we take a quick overview, then one of the biggest things about the USA is the job prospects, right? 47,500 startups is one thing. You have like 154 out of the top Fortune 500 companies based in the US. You have a thriving investor culture where you'll have a lot of equity companies.
Okay, there's something that you should watch.
If I can request you to put yourself on mute, please. Vandana? Yeah. Okay, all right, wonderful. So if we look at the job prospects, Then we see that we have a lot of Fortune 500 companies, a lot of private equity culture. So the ability to find jobs anywhere, whether it is media, design, education, technology, business, economics, marketing, that's a thriving economy that you're getting into despite COVID. So there is a lot of potential over there. Of course, for international students, it's a little bit difficult, and you would therefore have to really work hard to find a job, particularly after COVID, but the potential still remains the best in the world, right? So 88 of the 100 fastest growing companies. So you can really see also the thriving startup culture means that if you have a business idea, then you'll have people on your college campus who will be willing to partner with you. It's not so difficult to find someone who'll put a little bit of angel funding into what you're looking at, and you can really give your dreams a shot over there. All right, so that's about the job prospects in the USA. How does one stay back in the USA if you have studied over there? So the visa prospects in the USA really are the best for STEM courses, which means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Which means that if you have studied any one of these courses, either at the undergrad level or the postgrad level, you have a 3-year post-study work visa. For all other subjects, you have only a 1-year post-study work visa, but for STEM subjects, you have a 2-year additional post-study work visa. Now the interesting part over here is what they define as STEM, and which is actually a very broad definition. So of course you have engineering, computer science, data, biotechnology, medicine, but you also have psychology and special education. You also have web design, design architecture, multimedia design, digital communication. So there are a lot of very broad areas that would be qualify under STEM, including economics. So you can really, when you're choosing courses in the US, check and see whether they are STEM designated or not, which will really give you the best prospects to work with in the US. Because 3 years is a sort of a minimum time you need to be able to find the jobs that work for you, create networks, and then typically what people would do is go ahead and do a master's and then enjoy another few years of a postgraduate optional practical training, OPT, and at the end of which you've usually figured out your H-1B visa and your settling down prospects. Okay, so econometrics, managerial economics, management science, right? So of course the USA is one of the most expensive study destinations, but even here you have a broad range of the cost of attendance for various universities. So at the top Ivy League universities, you would end up spending 50 to 60 lakhs every year in INR, which is for a 4-year education, you end up spending a little over 2 crores over 4 years. So yes, it's an expensive education, but there are various universities where you would have lower fees. There are various universities which would give you financial aid. So it's really about seeing what you can afford and then finding the right place to go to, right, depending on what you can afford. So that's an overview of the USA for you. Then USA's cousin right next door, becoming one of the most popular destinations, is Canada. We've dubbed our Canada session today the Great Canadian Dream, because just like the Great American Dream, now Canada is becoming one of the most popular destinations for people to go and build a career and build their lives and build a fortune, right? So the biggest destinations that people are headed towards are Toronto and Vancouver, followed possibly by Montreal and Saskatchewan and Victoria. But the two education destinations truly are Toronto and Vancouver for most cities. The permanent residency and citizenship, once you are done, is not so difficult. You have a 3-year stay back after your course, and during this period you can apply for the PR, and often if you find a job, which is very important, right? So you have a stay back period, but you have to spend that time finding a job so that you can really financially afford staying back over there. So once you do that, then within that stay back period, people are usually able to convert that into a permanent residency. These are some of the biggest areas areas that they mention as being the areas that they are looking for jobs, looking for skilled workers in, where it's easier to get permanent residency. And as you can see, it's a very, very broad list: engineering, computer science, accounting, financial analysis, psychology, nursing, consulting, teaching, designing, law. So there's a lot of opportunity for you over there, really depending on what your skills are. A really, really broad arena for you to play in. Internationally recognized education, so you have some of the top universities there: U Toronto, UBC, McGill, Waterloo. They are all ranked among the top 50 universities across the world in almost all the big areas. So, whatever you may want to study, you really have a top class, world class education waiting for you in Canada. Co-op options are options where you can work for 1 year during your education. That not only makes it a little more affordable for you, but it also allows you to therefore build networks, so that for you to find jobs later is a little bit easier. So that's a wonderful thing, and almost all universities will offer you co-op options across all courses. So we will go into depth about this with Zang in about an hour. Before that, one of our first sessions will be with Martin Walsh, who, as you know, is the ex-deputy dean for international admissions at Stanford. So he'll at 10:30 take us through our understanding of the US and what the impact of COVID has been on IB and top admissions. And after that, we'll have Zang, who will be talking to us about the potential in Canada. So that is going to be what our morning session is mostly going to be about, right? So then if we move on to UK, this would be part of our afternoon session, which starts at 4 o'clock, and where again we look at all the tremendous potential that UK offers. So UK offers 3-year degrees, which makes it a little more affordable and a little closer to Indian education. And many universities will also flexibly offer you a 1-year co-op if you want. UK is also developing into a hub for jobs despite Brexit. You can see there are a lot of areas, particularly if you look at finance, even creative fields, if you look at technology fields. So it is a hub for a lot of jobs in Europe. The biggest industrial and professional hubs would be London, Cardiff as the capital of Wales, and Edinburgh in Scotland, and Glasgow in Scotland. Therefore, we do recommend to students to find universities in these areas so that it's easier for you to get internship opportunities, it's easier for you to get job opportunities, and therefore really convert your education into a sustainable stay back option for yourself. So those are the 3 hubs where we recommend students look for colleges and courses. But of course, there are some leading universities, Manchester, Durham, which would be just outside these hubs, which you can also be looking at, right? UK offers a 2-year post-study work visa, which only started about 2 years back. So that really gives you the opportunity to stay back and look for a job, and then to build those relationships so that you can convert your post-study work visa into a work permit. And once you do that, then in about 5 years, you can apply for a permanent residency. And finally, the fee in the UK would be about 25 lakhs to about 38 lakhs per year. So over 3 years, it would be almost half of what you'd be spending if you study in the US. Right, so the 4th destination that we'll be covering, and this again will be in our afternoon session, is Ireland. Ireland is another upcoming destination in Europe, essentially because a lot of the big tech companies have headquartered themselves in Ireland, whether it is Facebook, Google, Airbnb, PayPal, Microsoft, eBay, LinkedIn. You'll find that the European headquarters would be in Ireland. That makes it a thriving hub for jobs that you can reach out for. Of course, there are a number of internationally ranked universities in Ireland as well. University College Dublin, Trinity College Dublin. These are not easy universities to get admission in, also because they are, highly ranked, highly deeply research universities. They also expect a very high quality of education and study from the student. Then Ireland is really very welcoming of students like Canada. I had shared with you, you have a 2-year post-study work visa, which can once you get a job, be converted into a work permit, and then within 3 years that can get converted into an immigration permanent residency for you in Ireland. So it's really a pretty beautiful destination for you to look out for and to settle in Europe, and then to explore the rest of Europe, which is many people's life dream and on many people's bucket list. So it's a very good destination for you to look out for like that. The fee, again, if you see, is highly affordable, about 17 to 22 lakhs per year INR. So it is a highly affordable education that you can look out for. Right. And then the final destination that we are going to cover today will be Germany. Again, an upcoming destination that we've been researching a lot for some of our students, and we are really amazed and impressed with what we found. Not only is it a growing economy, one of the fastest growing economies in Europe, but it's also hugely open to international students, not just as students, but also to work. Some of the most thriving cosmopolitan cities there are Frankfurt, Berlin, Munich, Stuttgart, and people who we know who are working there have shared freely with us how beautiful a life experience it is, with very little discrimination. People mingle very beautifully with each other. It's a great European life experience in a growing economy, in a cosmopolitan situation. Some of the biggest areas of work over there are medicine, engineering, and business, right, which is really broad enough. Medicine, if you see, is occurring the first time in our list over here, and Germany is a great destination for people looking to study medicine. But of course, the process does involve 1 year of student colleague, which is a 1-year foundation year, which most students, not all, there are certain conditions which we'll go into depth in during the Germany session, but most students would need to go through a 1-year student colleague to be able to prepare themselves for German education. Post their education, they do get 18 months to work, and to be eligible for student colleague, you do need to know German, mostly at the B1 level, though there are a few courses that will be a little more flexible about it, but you really need to pick and choose according to that. But they're very, very helpful and very welcoming. Most universities, but particularly all the public universities, have a free undergraduate education, which means that it's free for international students as well, so you really need to only afford your living expenses. So and even if you're looking at private universities, then you end up paying about 20 to 30 lakhs per year for a private education over there. So it's a hugely affordable education with tremendous prospects that's available to you, right? So that's a little bit of an overview that we wanted to give you on the various study destinations. Sorry, I've rushed through it a little bit, but here we put together the comparison of the various countries for you across the destinations that we are talking about. So you can look at the comparison of COA's, cost of attendance, which is the fees and the living expenses. You can look at the ease of admission when it comes to visa. You can look at the ease of PR and citizenship. So I'll give you a minute to look at this before we move on. All right, so any questions over here? We'd be happy at this time to particularly understand what you're looking for, and if people can just share what are their particular countries of interest, that would be very, very useful for us. So we'll also get a sense from you on what you're particularly looking for. All right, so as you're putting your act together over there, let me just show you a little bit of our agenda for the day. So right now we're at the first session, which is over here, which is an overview of sessions, overview of different countries, which I just ran you through. And I know I literally ran you through it really, really fast, because we will go into depth of each of these in a little while. The next session we move into, and Martin is already here, so he can take you through it in just a bit, is the session on the US, where Martin will be running you through an overview of studying in the US and the top universities of the US, and particularly what the impact COVID has had on it and how you should be thinking about it now when you apply to the US, right? The third session, right after Martin's session, is the session on Canada, which will be led by Zang from Concordia University, where he will run us through our understanding of what it means to live and work in Canada, what is the potential that Canada offers you, and a little bit of an overview on his university as well. Post that, we have a break just to accommodate the time zones across the world. And 4 p.m. then we start off with Ireland. We'll have Nilanjana Shaheen talking about Ireland and then giving you a little bit of a view on Trinity College Dublin itself. But she'll also spend a lot of time helping you understand the potential that Ireland offers you. Post which we'll be looking at the UK, and Durga Ramji from London Metropolitan will be talking to you about studying in the UK, and particularly she'll pay attention on the graduate immigration route, which is that, you know, after you study your 2-year post-study work visa, and then how you can get a job and then convert that into a PR, into an immigration route. So she'll spend time helping you understand that. And finally, we have a session on Germany, where we'll be looking at the various areas that are strong in Germany. We'll be looking at the student college, we'll be looking at the study route available for you and the job prospects. And the last session, where myself and Kritika, who's here as well, we'll take you through, is an overview of how we work with students across these various destinations. So that's roughly what we'll be covering. We have a few thoughts here from people. A lot of people looking at US, UK, Canada, which USA, UK, US, UK, Canada. Of course, those are the 3 most popular destinations from India. I do hope at the end of the day, I'll have made you a little interested in Ireland and Germany as well. But this is roughly what it is. And there's a question over here from Shubha saying Netherlands is interesting because of course it's taught in English. Your thoughts? Yes, Shubha, Netherlands is a very interesting destination as well, and there's a 1-year post-study work visa. We do have a couple of students studying there. Perhaps we can do a more detailed session on Netherlands on another date. We don't find so much interest among our students and people who reach out to us, so we didn't include it over here. But now that you mention it, perhaps in our next session we should include it, and we'll be happy to one-to-one share with you what we understand about Netherlands as well. Ayana says job opportunities you were talking about were after completing the particular course, right? Absolutely. What about working while studying there? Okay, so working while studying there is what the co-op option is, right? So some universities in the UK and Canada will offer you co-op, which is a 1-year work option along with studying over there, which is something we'll go into greater depth in when we talk in these countries, right? And right, New Zealand. Yeah, Tiasha, New Zealand is a hitherto for us, you know, so somewhat unexplored region. We've not really built our expertise over there too much. We do have a understanding to some extent, which one-to-one we can share with you. So thank you very much. But as we can see, a lot of the interest really is in US, UK, Canada. And luckily for us, we really have an excellent speaker who can answer almost all your questions about the US, which is Mr. Martin Walsh. And you would have seen Martin has not only tremendous experience in this, he's actually been on the other side of the table leading international admissions for students in Stanford University, and he has a great depth of understanding of various universities. So I'll really not waste any more time introducing him and get him on. Hi Martin, and welcome to our show.
Hello. Let me just set up here really quick. Talking to you from San Francisco. From my home in San Francisco, I wish that my home had that view in the background. Boy, I'd be very rich. But instead, I think my home is very similar to your background, with lots of books and bookcases and things like that.
Wonderful to see you, Martin, after a while. How's life?
Nice to see you. It's good. I mean, an interesting kind of 1.5 years of schoolwork, and interesting. I was down at my school today. I work at a school in San Jose, Cupertino area, and we're going to try and start things up later in August. So we'll see what happens. Fingers are crossed.
Yeah, hope that you open up and things go fine for you. That'll be inspiring for a country like India where we don't know when that's going to happen for us. So I really hope
Yeah.
you open up and things work. So thanks, Martin. Do you? I was hoping that you would both introduce people a little bit to your in-depth understanding of top colleges and a little bit of an overview of how COVID has impacted things.
Sure. I have a PowerPoint if you would like to give me share, if you'd like to
I
make me
have,
a co-host, I can.
yeah, right. You could share your screen.
Okay, hold on for a moment then. Okay. If you'll just bear with me as I bring this up. And hopefully you can confirm that you can see things. And now, Rachel, you want me to go for about 30 minutes, I believe. That's the time you'd like me to go for?
Take your time, Martin. I'm sure we'd love to hear from you.
Alrighty. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone and for listening and coming in and joining us. A few words about me. I've been a high school counselor for almost 15 years now. I'm starting my 15th year. I also have trained international school counselors. I was a dean and director of admissions at two universities, Stanford University, which is obviously more of a global brand. And I was also a senior director of admissions at Santa Clara University, which is a great school just south of Stanford. The picture of me in the lower left-hand corner is me pre-COVID when you could get haircuts. Now I just kind of push my hair back and sort of go from there. I'm currently also on the University of Chicago's Counselor Advisory Board. So I just share that with you so that you get a feel that I've got some experience doing this. I stumbled into college admissions work to be honest with you, when I needed a break from teaching in the IB curriculum. I was the IB history teacher at Escuela Campo Alegre, the international school in Caracas, Venezuela. I came home from that particular job and I thought to myself, well, I wouldn't mind a little break from teaching. And I decided to explore the world of college admissions. I didn't really think that much of it. I knew as a teacher, I was kind of interested in the whole thing. Never in a million years did I expect to kind of rise up and become an assistant dean and sort of learn all about this sort of this field. And now I'm kind of addicted. I very much love it. And as far as teaching history goes, that's something I just do on my own. I read those books on my own. When you're coming into an admissions office, you really want to understand what admissions model is the university running. And then more importantly, what trends are impacting decisions. For the students out there listening, I must stress that college admissions is basically a business. That part of education is a business. Your job as a dean of admissions is to fill the dorm beds, is to complete that freshman class. And the more you recognize that this is a business, the more you might understand that decision-making isn't always based just on grades. So, that basic question of who do I admit or who gets into a university, whether that university be Stanford or whether that university be Cal Berkeley or Santa Clara University, it really is sort of like, what admissions model are we running at the university and what trends are impacting our decisions? So there's two kind of models out there that are used in the American system. Large public universities like University of Washington, Seattle, or University of Florida, or University of California, Davis, they're pretty numeric, meaning they're gonna make their decisions based upon program of study, engineering or English or history, combined with what your grades were at your high school. So that's numeric evaluation. As a student that you're applying into a numeric evaluation program when you don't have to write many essays, when you don't really have to send in letters of recommendation, when the colleges are really just asking for your grades. I wanted to run a numeric evaluation model at Stanford. I thought that would be really great. And then we could just read some applications, develop a spreadsheet, and then go and play golf the rest of the day. The problem, of course, is that about 90% of the kids that applied to Stanford were numerically competitive just fine. You're an awfully smart generation out there listening, much smarter than mine. So the other model that's embraced by many private universities is holistic evaluation, which means they're going to look at a lot of different factors. I tell students that holistic evaluation is a little bit like, if you're watching the Olympics right now, it's a little bit like, watching those hurdlers go over a series of hurdles. Holistic evaluation defined as the evaluation of the overall quality of the applicant by considering various or lots of aspects or components. Think of your evaluation process as a series of hurdles your application must jump over. So I'm going to walk you through some of the hurdles that I kind of experienced. When someone applied to me, when I worked at Stanford, when somebody applied when I worked at Santa Clara, the first test was always just, do they survive this numeric hurdle? Do they have the grades to make themselves competitive at my school? How do those grades match up with what I'm looking for? And numeric evaluation due to COVID is changing a little bit. You're still looking at grades, although some kids have pass or fail. Testing is optional at most schools, although it's actually test blind. But you're really definitely looking at grades, the courses, the grades that you achieved at the high school you attend, and you're always evaluated within the context of your country and your high school, along with the rigor. Did you challenge yourself? So that was the first hurdle. And at Stanford, I would argue that maybe 10 or 12% of the kids did not pass that first hurdle, but a lot of them did. There was close to 85 or 90% did. But the first hurdle was numeric. A couple of quick questions. I know that there's someone out there listening, there's 34 participants. Someone's thinking, well, I have bad grades, when I was 14 or 13, does that mean I can never get into Stanford or Harvard? And my answer is no. You're trying to look at the grades contextually. You're looking for trends. You're looking to see if the engineers are strong in math and physics. You're looking to see how your liberal arts kids are with humanities courses like linguistics, English, or history. So you're always kind of evaluating the transcript with a degree of context. And you're also giving the applicant room to grow. So if you had a slow start to high school, it doesn't mean that there's no way you're going to be admitted. Now, the second prong in the evaluation process is what I call, colleges looking at those personal qualities. They're jumping in and they're taking a deep dive and trying to figure out, well, what do I get if I admit this student? I always thought, my best metaphor perhaps for college admissions is if you're an admissions dean or an admissions officer, what you're really trying to do is create a very, very interesting dinner party. The table is filled with different opinions, ideas, vibrant energy. That's really what you're doing. It's a moderately social job. You're saying to yourself, gosh, this looks like an interesting kid. He or she will contribute a lot. So the second prong of the assessment involves looking at the student's personal qualities to see if you kind of pass the "Are you interesting?" test. Now, the second prong, or the second hurdle, I should say, what the colleges value can truly vary by college. So when I worked at Santa Clara University, that was a Catholic school. That was a Jesuit university. I believe there's a Catholic Jesuit population in the Goa region of India. Anyway, what you've got then is, what Santa Clara valued was they were looking for kids who had an impact on their community, who had shown kind of a degree of purpose, passion, and meaning. That was kind of a big for them. Other colleges really look for challenges met and overcome, and things like that. Now, the second prong specifically at Stanford, we called it intellectual vitality. And that second prong, and I'll kind of go through it slowly at Stanford, we said it's easier to identify than to define. So right off the bat, it's like you're going to kind of that whole feeling of like, this kid's cool, lots of AP and college courses, long-term papers, research projects doesn't mean you've got vitality. So what is vitality? Vitality that's students that they've assumed responsibility for their own learning. They've shown maturity and self-discipline in the fulfillment of a project, well beyond the limitations of a school assignment. They read deeply and create energetically, they do these things, these amazing things. Now, it's pretty easy to sit there and say vitality, this is what it is. And here's the screenshot. As a student, you're probably like, I don't get it. I need more of what you're talking about. So let me see if I can give you some examples to illustrate that surviving that second hurdle at a school like Stanford. The first thing I want to stress is that intellectual vitality is not always academic. I had a student that trained and got his pilot's license while in high school. I would argue that's intellectual vitality, curiosity about flight. Can I do it? I had a student that trained for a marathon. I thought that showed intellectual vitality, learning about her body, trying to figure out how she can best kind of set up a diet so that she can run this 26-mile race, of kids that started businesses, then failed, kids that wrote and submitted their writing to magazines, kids that did a lot of volunteer work, learned languages. Intellectual vitality is sort of that thing of like, this is what makes the kid cool. Now, where am I going to look for that vitality? From the college essays, from the letters of recommendation, and of course, from the activities section. So here's a student I worked with years ago who was admitted to Stanford, Irvi. Irvi was amazing, just a wonderful person, really kind, great grades. But that wasn't what got her into Stanford. I couldn't turn to Stanford and say, you've got to admit this student because she's so nice and has wonderful grades. In reality, what Irvi had created was a program. While she was a ninth grader, she started this math tutoring program in the city of San Jose, where she kind of set up a tutoring program in a local library. Eventually, over a 4-year period, that program grew to include 4 different library locations. She hired and trained 16 teachers. She wrote the math curriculum. She was named Volunteer of the Year by the city of San Jose's libraries. So that is vitality. Stanford admitted her. Not only did she survive that first hurdle, but she had that second hurdle, which was like, she'd really acted on a passion. She had had an impact on her community. To go back here to our intellectual vitality rubric, yeah, she had taken significant responsibility for her learning by designing that curriculum. She'd shown maturity and self-discipline in the fulfillment of a project by setting up that sort of nonprofit tutoring organization. She'd read deeply and created energetically. I mean, she really kind of fit all of those things. So when you're looking at those actions or activities, that's what I mean by, where you're identifying the vitality that we're talking about. Now, right off the bat, I know there's students out there thinking, well, is there a particular activity that shows vitality? And I would say, no, there's no single activity that I could say will super impress the admissions officer. And like I said, there's so many different options. It doesn't have to be community service unless perhaps you've got your eye on schools like Georgetown or Notre Dame or Santa Clara, those schools with Catholic traditions. Vitality can be shown by being really, really great athlete or an amazing debater. So your extracurriculars don't even have to align with your major. So to go back to Irvi, quite frankly, there she was with this great math program that she set up, but she didn't study math at Stanford. And in fact, right now she's a medical researcher in medical school, I believe. So, so there's that. That's the vitality. There's no magic number of activities. There's no this, that, but activities is one area where a reader is looking for and trying to identify vitality. The other area, of course, is the college application essays. Now, I've done entire, 90-minute workshops on what makes for a good essay and how to approach those things. All I can say is that, your writing is a chance for you to get your story out to the reader. The application essays, those are great chances for you to kind of show that vitality of here's a story from my life. Here's what that story means. Here's what I understand about my life now. Here's what I understand. Here's what I value, and here are the values that I'm bringing to your campus. I won't spend too much time on this because, again, I feel like a workshop on the writing of the essay is completely different. I do, though, encourage students to think of your college application essay as a dinner or lunch table conversation between yourself and the admissions officer. You've got his or her attention for maybe 180 seconds, maybe a touch more, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You're allotted about 550 to 650 words. You're going to hopefully tell a story, an experience from your life, a habit that you've had, and then give that story some meaning. In the process, I think that that's a great way to show vitality. The reader will pick up on how you've thought deeply about something. All right, so you've got that first hurdle, which is numeric, and you've got that second hurdle, which is showing intellectual vitality or purpose, passion, and meaning, or this or that. But, Now, the third hurdle is a bit trickier. And I always think that if this were a science fiction movie, this third hurdle would be more like one of those mountains from a sci-fi movie, and the mountain's got dragons flying around it, and it's covered in fog and lightning bolts. And this is the hurdle where I actually think that a lot of applications come to die. And sadly, this is a hurdle that you have little control over. The fact of the matter is that undergraduate universities, they have institutional needs. Now, the needs could be as simple as we need more men in this program and women in that program. The needs could be as simple as we need more international or less international. But these trends absolutely impact admissions decisions. So the first trend is definitely the fact that STEM programs, things like computer science, computer engineering, just straight up engineering, these programs are getting more applications than other programs. A university is broken down into individual colleges. So when you apply to, for example, the University of California, Berkeley, and you're applying to the electrical engineering, computer science major, that's going to be infinitely more competitive to get into than if you applied to the University of California, Berkeley. College of Letters and Sciences has a poetry major. There's just, that's just the reality. And I know someone's out there is thinking, I'm going to apply to Berkeley as a poetry major, write one bad poem, and then transfer to engineering. And I would caution you, and I'd say it's not as easy as you think, and you might end up being a poet longer than you want to be. Major matters. So the thing that you want to study can absolutely impact your odds of being admitted. I mean, case study here for the University of Washington, Seattle, and you can see this purple line going straight up beginning in about 2010. It's just the explosion of computer science applications to the school. Computer science admit rates, more likely than not, are going to be much lower than the overall admit rate for schools. So Carnegie Mellon University, which is an amazing school in Pittsburgh, their comp sci admit rate was right around 5%. Their overall admit rate is much closer to 25%. Which tells me, of course, that applying and studying history at Carnegie Mellon is going to be a bit easier than applying to Carnegie Mellon to study computer science. The same would be true for Georgia Tech, Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. You see that the overall admit rates for the school don't always give you insight into the admit rate for the program of study that you're shooting for. So you can survive the first hurdle, great grades. You can survive the second hurdle, which is kind of like, amazing essays, wonderful letters of recommendation, but you might not survive the third hurdle if you're just trying to open the door and get into a room that's already too crowded. The best analogy I have is like, look, you could show up at a restaurant. You could say, I'm wearing nice clothes. I've got plenty of money in my wallet to spend at your restaurant. I want to eat at your restaurant, but the restaurant might just turn to you and say, but we have no seats. And what I've noticed over the last 14 years is every year when I'm working with CS kids, when I'm working with engineering kids, that universities will turn away and deny some really, really strong kids. And when I talk to the universities, they just say, we hated to let go of that applicant, but the fact of the matter is, there's just not any room left in that particular program. Engineering application counts really explode. You talk to people at Little Santa Clara University, up 12% in 1 year. USC 1 year saw a jump of 20% in engineering application counts. This can really, you can survive those first two hurdles, but you could be basically in a line that's very, very crowded. The other thing to keep in mind is that private universities in particular are businesses. Your job as dean of admissions is to make sure that the freshman class is filled. If your job is to create a class of 1,000 students, you create that class of 1,000 students. You fill 1,000 dorm beds. Years ago when I was at Santa Clara, I think we were short, 3 or 4 or 5 kids. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was like, well, 3 or 4 or 5 kids is not a big deal. Well, you start to times 5 kids over 4 years, take into account tuition, housing, books. And by the end, you start to get out your calculator and you're like, okay, by being short 5 kids, Santa Clara University, lost out on close to $500,000. So your job as dean of admissions is not to fall short. Your job is to fill the class. So a lot of private universities came up with what's called early decision. Now, why do private universities love early decision? It's a way to guarantee that you're going to fill your class. It's a guaranteed yield. When you apply early decision, you're sending your application to the United States University in October, and you're finding out the result in December. By applying early decision, you are giving up some of your freedoms. You are basically saying, I promise to go to your school if you admit me. In return for that promise, the university says, I promise to give you a better odds of admissions offer, better odds of admit if you apply ED. So there's your kind of offer acceptance consideration for our future lawyers out there. So for neophytes, for people still learning about the American system, please recognize that there are 3 different early programs out there. Early decision, which is like marriage, it's like, okay, if you admit me, I promise to go. And because it's like marriage, you can only apply to 1 early decision school. I know that someone's out there thinking, I'm going to apply to 12 EDs. Well, on my wedding day, I think if there were 12 future wives approaching me, I was going to be in big trouble. So, you can only apply to 1 school ED, and you're committing to that school in return for that great or improved admit rate. The other early programs are early action, which is non-binding, meaning if they admit you, you don't have to go. I feel like early action is a bit of a dying breed. More and more schools aren't really running early action programs anymore, in part because they don't get anything out of it. There's no guaranteed yield. Engineering schools are the exception. Georgia Tech, MIT, Caltech, Michigan all offer an early action option. And then finally, there's my least favorite option, which is single choice early action. And that's Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford, your HIPS, HYPS. You can hit your HIPS down there. And what they're basically saying is, if we admit you, you don't have to come to our school, which is a bit like a beautiful supermodel saying, you don't have to marry me, but you're going to want to go to that school. So they're not worried about yield at all. So Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford offers early action, but it's single choice. You can only apply to one school. And what they're effectively telling the elite kids in the world, they're basically saying, pick one of us and go for it. You can't just sit there and spread your applications to all of us. So those are your early options. But the one that really can improve your odds of admissions, and the one that a lot of colleges lean on, is early decision. So again, early decision defined is, if admitted, you must go. It's the ultimate sign of demonstrated interest. You're going to get a clear statistical bump in the process. Let me illustrate that. Let me illustrate that here on the bottom. You can see that schools like Johns Hopkins, 30% of their class filled up, and you get big bumps in the admit rates. George Washington University, 61% on their admit rate on the ED side. You get pretty big bumps there. So when you're getting ready to think about this, I encourage students to think clearly about their early application. This is a student I worked with that blew it, I thought. The student had a 1530 SAT and a 4.0 on a 4.5 scale GPA. A great student, but not elite. The student still decided to apply to Stanford restrictive early action, and of course was denied. And then in the regular pool was denied at Brown, Carnegie Mellon, Columbia, Penn, all these other early decision schools. Didn't get anything, in part because, quite frankly, those schools, by the time they got to the regular decision, were like restaurants. They were already filled up and they had no, we don't need you, And so he got into schools that were basically large public schools that don't offer early decision. If this student with those numbers had applied ED to Carnegie Mellon, I think he would have done just fine, but that's what we call opportunity cost. Mike, on the other hand, is a student I worked with, an international student in Beijing, a 1500 SAT, desperately wanted nanoscience at Stanford. I had to be really clear. I said, you have zero prayer of getting into Stanford. Let's find an early decision school to improve our odds. He identified Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, great nanoscience program, applied early decision, and was admitted. I am absolutely positive that if it had been in the regular pool, he would have been denied. Early decisions impact. Okay, so let's take a look at a university here. And the university I chose to share with you is Northwestern. If you're dean of admissions at Northwestern, you're trying to create a class of 1,940 students, of which 400 are engineers. In the early decision, Northwestern runs an ED program. Early decision round, they got 4,050 applications. It's great. They admitted 970 students. Exactly 50% of the class was filled. And of those 970 students, 200 were engineers. So before December 25th, before Christmas, Northwestern had filled half their class. In the regular decision round, they received 36,375 applications. All they had to get was 970 deposits or yields. Overall, you're looking at a 26% early decision admit rate, a 6% regular decision admit rate, and an overall admit rate of 8%. This illustrates how early decision can absolutely help you or hurt you. So again, if you're in the early decision pool, you're getting a bump. But if you've got great grades and wonderful essays, tons of vitality, and you just time your application wrong, you could be in trouble and still be denied. Okay, we just had one of the most interesting cycles I've ever been a part of. COVID really threw things off. And I think I'll set the stage by saying, what year are we at? This is 2021, right? So 2020 COVID hits, and it actually hits in February. So colleges were coming out with their regular decision results. And boy, oh boy, did things not look good there. International students were staying at home. there were lots of political issues with the elections coming up. Kids were opting to go to England or Canada or just take a gap year. In the United States, a lot of kids were doing the same thing. And what you saw with a lot of universities in 2020 was concerns that they weren't going to make their class, that they were going to fall short, not by 1 or 2 kids, but by a lot of kids. So coming into 2021, the cycle that we just finished up with, the colleges went into kind of a yield protection strategy zone, and they really started to embrace the early decision rounds more than ever. So my first tip for students out there listening is, after you develop your list, please look closely at schools that offer early decision options. If there's a school you love that offers an ED program, do it. I know that it might be emotional and difficult to let go of Stanford, Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, but your odds of being admitted to those schools are minuscule. Your odds of being admitted to Duke, Rice, Wash U, St. Louis, Northwestern, I can name a ton of early decision schools where I'm like, they will improve tremendously. And in this time of economic uncertainty, where here in the United States, fewer kids are going to college and fewer families have enough money for college, early decision could be a great thing to take advantage of. Additionally, as you're making out your list or developing your list, shop for bargains. What do I mean by that? Well, there were some great bargain schools in the last cycle. So for my business students out there, my goodness, Boston College, Lynch School of Business, that's a top 10 school. They had a 41% early decision admit rate. That's amazing. For my med students out there, Emory University in Atlanta had a 31% early decision admit rate. Atlanta's right by the Center for Disease Control. Atlanta's got a hospital on campus. These are the bargains of the century. This is like buying Apple computer stock back in 1986. This is what you want to do. You want to identify those bargain schools, those schools that offer amazing academic programs, and are trying to fill up their class on that ED side. If I were advising students, I'd be like, avoid those restrictive early action schools like Harvard, Yale, or Stanford. You're just not going to get a statistical bump. It's just a bad play. If I'm an engineering student, I would identify a strong ED engineering option, but then I would combine it with a ton of early action schools: Illinois, Purdue, Michigan, Georgia Tech, Caltech, MIT. If you're an engineer, there's no such thing as too many admissions offers. You've got to get your applications out there. And in fact, I would argue that here in California, my students that are applying liberal arts, biology, or something like that, they're generally averaging 10 or 11 applications. My students that are applying on the engineering side are applying to close to 17 or 18 schools. And I'm in California, where the UCs just count as one. Be rational in your decision-making. Do not expect a miracle. Work with your counselor to have a good, long, hard look at your numbers. Look at your extracurriculars. Have you started a program that's won recognition at a national or local level? Are you that type of superstar that's truly Stanford quality, or are you just a really, really strong student with great grades and normal vitality, in which case I would adjust the list a bit. So shop for bargains and don't expect miracles. Finally, when you're writing your application essays, everyone spends so much time on that common application personal statement. But my secret tip to the students is this: if there is a why question, why are you applying to my university? And a great example of that would be the University of Chicago, which asks, how does the University of Chicago, as you know it now, satisfy your desire for a particular kind of learning, community, and future? Please address with some specificity your own wishes and how they relate to Chicago. I promise you, your answer to this why question is as important as any personal statement that you write. Why questions are what we call in the industry yield questions. It's a way for the university to judge how serious you, the applicant, are about my school. Remember, if I'm dean of admissions, if I'm taking off my high school counselor hat and I'm going to be a dean of admissions hat again, like, I keep my job, and my job is paying me, I don't know, $200,000 a year. I have campus housing for free. My kids are going to school for free. I want to keep that job. I'm going to keep my job by filling the dorm beds. How do I fill in the dorm beds? I admit kids that I think are definitely going to come to my school. They're going to apply early decision. They're going to write these great why answers to the why question. That's a big one that I would focus in on a lot. Other trends, demonstrate your interest, even internationally, attend online information sessions, communicate with admissions officers if you can, become an expert on the schools. Make it so that when your application arrives at that university, the admissions officer might have an idea who you are, and show that interest, attend those information sessions, learn about the schools. I do think that we're coming in on a cycle that the international student population is going to be valued. And I think that for the next 2 or 3 cycles, that's going to be true. And here's why. I'm going to go back to demographics in the United States. Fewer 18-year-olds are alive, in the United States. We've had a population dip. Second, of those group of 18-year-olds, fewer are going to college. Families can't afford it. Kids are opting to do other things. Some of my tech kids are just going right into industry. They're not going to college. Finally, a lot of private universities in the United States became addicted to international money. And during the Trump years and sort of with the election coming in, there was a lot of stress and strain placed on that kind of pipeline of international kids. American universities know that in order for them to survive economically, they have to reestablish that flow, that application flow internationally. So I think that coming up in the next few cycles, I think that international students have more power, particularly full pay international students. International students that have tremendous financial need, I would say you really have to carve out a special list and focusing on colleges that offer money to international students. Not everyone does. Go from there. Now, I gave you a brief overview of private universities. I didn't talk about like the University of California system or University of Texas. Those are public schools. They're going to evaluate you mainly numerically, although the UC system has 4 very easy essays to write, very easy, very short. And again, I think that a good college list has both. You should have some private universities and some publics. The public universities in the United States are oftentimes great for engineering and research. The public universities are often the most diverse in terms of socioeconomics, ethnicities, etc. And oftentimes public universities are very welcoming to international students. And I would include schools like UCLA and Cal Berkeley here in California. University of Minnesota has a large international student population. I mean, these are great schools, easy applications. And there's no early decision game that they're playing. So it's not like you game the system. So once you send off those early decision and early action applications, catch your breath, and in November, send off your applications to large public schools. That would probably represent your safety net, both in terms of admissions offers, but also in terms of perhaps even financial aid and or scholarshiping. So again, to give you an overview, college admissions is a fun job. Your job is to actually fill the dorm beds for that freshman class. Public universities evaluate numerically. Private universities evaluate holistically. Holistic evaluation is going to have a lot of hurdles, and what those hurdles are can vary by college, but all of them, I would argue, begin with numbers. And then they've got that second hurdle that's sort of about vitality or being interesting. And then, of course, that third hurdle is institutional needs. What is the college looking for? And all those other factors. I think that's what I've got. I tried to fit it into that 30-minute section there. So, Reach, I'll pause now if there's questions or whatever you'd like to do next.
Thank you so much, Martin. That really gave me a lot of insight as well, particularly about the college list strategy for students. We do have a few questions here, and please feel free, guys, to put in more questions in the chat so I can address them to Martin. But if you don't mind, I'd start with a question of my own. That, a lot of students in India seem to have this thought that unless I go into the Ivies, it's not worth it for me to have a US education. And while, of course, we do as counselors tell them how low the odds are, I believe that during the COVID year, the Ivy and the absolute top colleges, the odds became even worse. So would you suggest that people should really try and stay away from those? How would you suggest people should read that?
Well, I think that now, again, I'm going to be pretty geographically biased. Here I am in California. The Ivy Leagues are those old stuffy schools back on the East Coast, in Boston and Philadelphia and New York. I'm a huge fan of the global economy that we've got here in California. And I'm a huge fan of schools like the University of California, San Diego, the University of California, Berkeley. I'm a huge fan of Stanford University. I'm going to give you my West Coast bias, which is I think that the Ivy Leagues are fine, but I don't sit there and think that I don't have them up on that pedestal that many people have them at. And I think that if a student sits there and says, well, the only reason to come study in the United States would be to go to a Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, I would say, have a nice time. You're going to still be in India then. I would strongly encourage them to look at schools and do their research and recognize that the city of Austin, Texas is an absolute engineering mecca with tons of startups. So certainly UT Austin would be great, and Rice University down in Houston would be absolutely amazing. I would encourage them to look at every UC and even some Cal States here in California. I know my wife, who works at Berkeley, who works at Google, says that probably Berkeley is the #1 most represented university in the Google campus that she's on. Both my wife and my niece work at Google. One went to Boston University, the other went to the University of Colorado. These are not Ivy League schools, and they're doing quite fine. I just don't buy into like it has to be an Ivy League, and nor do I understand that, particularly looking at the economic realities and where the money is. And the money's, when it comes to innovation, the money's on the West Coast, and there's no Ivy Leagues on the West Coast.
Right. No, thank you so much. That perspective is actually very enlightening, particularly about top colleges over here. So, if you don't mind, I'll read out some of the questions we have here for you, Martin. This one I don't clearly understand. It says, "Is there a bias against Indian bits in STEM in Stanford? Indian students in STEM in Stanford?" I would say, why would there be a bias against them? I'm not sure. I don't understand the question. Avni, do you want to?
Let me see if that question is sort of like, is there a quota, like we'll only take X number of students from India or things like that? My answer would be that colleges generally do not have a quota. It's not like, oh, we will only admit 5 kids from India this year or 7 kids from China this year. I never sat in on meetings where there was any sort of quota. I would also say that that colleges at the same time, when it comes to creating an international undergraduate population, are trying to create a degree of geographic diversity. So while there'll be no quota, meaning, oh, we'll only take 5 kids from India, they also want to make sure that in that international population, they get kids from all over the world. So from India, from Ethiopia, from Cambodia. So, I think that when you're, a country like India that produces some brilliant kids, a country like South Korea that produces brilliant kids, sometimes the kids feel like there's a bias against them. What I try and explain is like, there's also other smart kids in other parts of the world. And, you can't just fill up your international population with kids from one country. You're trying to create that diversity. So there's no quota, there's no bias against anybody, but, you're at a country where a lot of kids are applying to school in the United States, and that can make it a little bit more competitive.
Right. So the second question actually, I think, has a lot of nuances to it. What this Avni is asking is, can you change your major within engineering? For example, if you've selected mechanical, and you now want to change to computer science. Now, I have a couple of related questions to this, but please answer this and then I'll ask you those.
I think that I'm going to use a legal term here, which is sort of a case-by-case basis. And part of that would be like doing your research on the college and trying to learn how much leeway they give you to change programs or majors. There might be some schools that really don't give you much leeway to change programs or majors, and others can be very, very liberal. So that's kind of a case-by-case, sort of see. More often than not, when you're changing majors within a school, like I'm in the School of Engineering, I want to go from mechanical engineering to electrical engineering. That's much easier than saying, gosh, I'm in the School of Liberal Studies, and I want to go from being an English major to being a mechanical engineering major. That's where you're literally moving to a different building, and that can be very difficult, almost impossible sometimes.
Right. I've also found that in some universities, it's very difficult to get the major of your choice. For example, UWash Seattle, where I've found that, traditionally several of our students have struggled to get a computer science major or even an economics major. So I wonder if one can get a sense of which are the universities where it's really difficult to do that.
Well, so University of Washington, Seattle is great in some ways, in the sense that they do admit a lot of kids, and that's always wonderful. But if you're not admitted into your major, then you might be in trouble a year down the road when you sit there and say, okay, now I want to start taking computer science classes, and they're saying, no, we want you to be a psychology major. So I've probably had more than any school in my time as a counselor. I've had kids transfer out of UW Seattle, not because they didn't love the school. The school's drop dead gorgeous, and it's a wonderful school. But if you don't get that admissions into the engineering CS piece, then it's like my kids were like, well, why am I here? So they kind of transfer out. So that's again part of doing your research. Some schools you get admitted directly into your major. Other times you're just admitted into the university, and then they're going to weed you out when you're there. I think that UW Seattle should get rid of that policy. I think it causes more harm than good. But at the same time, I think that it's a great way for the University of Washington Seattle's admissions office to get a very robust and deep applicant pool. So there's ethics and there's business.
Right. Martin, I also had a student last year who got an undeclared admission into UCSD and wanted to study engineering, but she didn't join for fear that she wouldn't get the major. Would that be really difficult, because you're talking about people transferring majors in a place like UCSD? Would getting a major be challenging enough for you to take the risk?
Yeah, was she admitted undeclared into which school at UCSD? Which in College of Engineering or?
Into engineering, but not computer science, which is what she wanted.
Oh, I would tell the student then that's like between her and UCSD, and my guess is if she's in that engineering school, she would have gotten into computer science if she'd opted to go that route.
Right, wonderful. So let me run through some more questions here, Martin. There's a question on biotechnology. How does it work for biotechnology in the US? Are better jobs offered after a master's degree?
I don't, I'm not a biotechnologist. I'm not 100% sure on that. As much as I'd love to be an expert on, I'm fascinated by career and career services. I do think that for a lot of American universities, save your money and take on debt for that master's or graduate degree, because that's like the pre-professional degree that gets you the job. But I can't say I'm an expert on the field of biotechnology.
Right, absolutely. So this question again, I think is the question I've asked you before, but I don't know if you can give some insight. The question is, how do I know if they allow a change of majors to the US? So is a university easy with this change of majors or getting a major? Is it very
so again, again, it's a case-by-case basis. So you could take a school like Johns Hopkins, and they're very liberal of letting kids kind of float or change majors. I would even argue that Stanford is. Brown is incredibly liberal. That's called an open curriculum, as is University of Rochester. You can kind of design your own major. Other schools are not. It's just quite simply a question that you ask as part of your research, whether it be during an information session or whether it be an email to an admissions officer. If I'm applying, into this major, what if I want to change majors or change schools? What is that process? How easy or hard is it to do?
Right, Martin, thanks. One question over here is, given the pandemic, actually this is a question a lot of people asked us during registration, then how are colleges evaluating applications given the test optional processes that most colleges have? How are they evaluating it? How much does SAT, ACT matter?
Oh my gosh, I feel like the reality is that there were so many global test prep companies that everyone had good scores. I think that the testing had become so watered down that the colleges were getting very little out of it. And I think that many colleges are thrilled to be test optional now. When you literally have kids here in my area of California, retaking the SAT for a third time because they're worried that a 1570 is not good enough. We're at the point now where that's insanity. The test was becoming a moneymaker for a lot of private test prep companies, but it wasn't giving the universities any sort of gauge in terms of who is more qualified than not. Throw in the fact that because taking a test was so expensive and taking these test prep courses was so expensive, all that really became was, kids that were wealthy enough to get test prep tutoring were doing well on the test, and kids that were not wealthy enough were not doing well on the test. And so the colleges, like MIT was very quick to say, yeah, it did us no good. and we're letting it go. Now, going test optional means the student can absolutely send in the test if they want. Every university I've spoken with has absolutely said that if a kid did not send in a test, they truly did not care and it didn't phase them that much at all. I will say that by going test optional, schools like MIT saw a huge explosion in applications, in part because that test had been a barrier, again. And when you talk to schools like Harvard or MIT, the explosion in applications came from a much more diverse, socioeconomically diverse population, a population of kids that they would have never seen had they kept that testing requirement in place. I think that the SAT and the ACT is dead. I think the colleges are going to look at letters of recommendation, grades, rigor, context of the school, essays. I think it had become, particularly at elite schools, it had lost its purpose a long time ago.
Also, because subject tests have been scrapped now by SAT, a lot of students are switching to APs instead. Would that be a recommended strategy, Martin?
Well, I guess you could. I mean, some kids, like, if your school offers an AP curriculum and you're taking AP tests, fine. If you feel like you want to self-study for an AP, particularly to cover a subject that's not covered at your school, like let's say that your school does not offer economics, and you're really interested in the subject, and self-studying and taking the AP test and reporting it, that could be something to show the reader. Yeah.
Right, but otherwise, just like, you already have maths and physics, let's say, in your school curriculum, but you also take the APs to make your application more attractive to top colleges and Ivies. Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, you're adding, for a lot of kids internationally, what they're very focused on is that first hurdle. They're very focused on the numeric piece. When I'm always like, your numbers are probably really good, I'm always focused on the second hurdle, which is, are you interesting? What are you doing besides studying for a test? I see over your left shoulder, I see the ACT book, I see the testing book and things like that on the bookshelf. When I talk to international kids or when I talk to kids here domestically, I'm always saying, I'm actually not as worried about your numbers as you are. I'm worried about surviving the second hurdle, that hurdle of like, what have you done that makes you stand out? I think that if a student wants to show a degree of rigor by self-studying for an AP test, they can do that. My guess is that, of the students out there listening, I bet you a lot of them, I'm like, your numbers are fine, but there's nothing interesting about your life after that. You're going to do fine in a numeric evaluation environment. You'll get into UCSD or you'll get into University of Florida or University of Michigan, which are great schools. But, when it comes to getting into one of those elite schools where they're loading you down with lots of essays, where they're trying to kind of learn about your life story and impact on community, taking self-studying for 5 AP exams is going to do you no good.
Right. So I'm going to ask you one last question now, Martin, which is actually, it's going to sound like something you've already answered before, but I just want to ask a very specific twist on that. So the question Sneha has asked you is, how much do high school grades matter in getting into a good college? The twist I want to put onto that is, of course, high school grades matter. But like if a student is applying to top colleges, Ivies, and then the tier one, all the top 25 US universities say, would it make a big difference, let's say in percentage terms, if a student has a 97% versus a 94%, does that matter?
I think that's, clearly the kid with the 97% has a big leg up on the kid with an 88%. But when it's like a 97 versus 94, so that's not the deciding factor. If I have both those kids in front of me, I'm not picking one. I'm reading their essays. I'm looking at the letters of recommendation. I'm looking for other things.
Got that. Martin, thank you very much. I see most of the other questions here have been answered. Two quick ones, because people have put them there and I don't want them to feel like they didn't get heard. How hard is it to get into a non-STEM major? That's one.
I mean, they're like a school like Yale, I would argue, is actually more non-STEM than STEM. Meaning, like, it's not like Yale's got some huge engineering CS department. So it's like, the Yale history department is very hard to be admitted into. It can really, it can really vary, as far as that goes. I can say though that those schools like the Carnegie Mellons and the Stanfords of the world that have these really deep and rich engineering programs, when you're trying to open that engineering door, it can be very difficult.
Right. And there's the last one is a very specific question. I'm not sure if you would be able to give a very specific answer to that. That what should be my subject choice in grade 11 if I want to pursue biology in the longer run?
Could you explain subject choice to me?
Subject choice. So probably what the student is asking, should I take physics, chemistry, and biology?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Just take biology and math, or what should I? What are they looking for?
I think that quite frankly, I would focus a lot on like which classes will you do best in. I think that would be my first question to the student. Play to your strengths. I don't think that the undergraduate colleges in the United States have this prescription of like, here's what you definitely have to take. The reality is that the American model assumes that the 18 and 19-year-olds are probably going to change their mind a little bit. So, I can't sit there and say here's for sure the path I would take.
Got that. Yeah, thank you so much, Martin. Thanks a lot. That's
Thanks.
very, very enlightening. I see a lot of questions on essays, but I'm not putting that to you at all because that'll be another 40
Yeah,
minutes before we
I think that's a whole different. I'll do a writing presentation when you want me to, but I think that would be. I'd be talking to you till the sun came up here in California. So,
Thank
right.
you very much and a very good night to you, Martin. Thanks for
Very
joining.
good night. Nice to see you. Bye bye.
Bye. Take care. All right, guys. Thank you for all your interesting questions over there. And now we move to the Great Canadian Dream, and we do have Fan Zang over here to give you a view on what Canada offers you, what's the great opportunity that Canada offers Indian students, and then particularly what Concordia offers. Fan, open to you. Do share a little introduction of yourself, and then enlighten us.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me very well?
Yes, Fan, we
Okay,
can.
perfect. Thank you, Richard, for having me today. So my name is Fan Zan. I'm from Concordia University, located in Montreal, Canada. So I'm very happy to be presenting today in front of you virtually. So I was an international student myself. I was born and raised in Shanghai, China, and I went to Canada about over 14, actually 15 years ago as an international student to pursue my undergraduate studies. And I finished my degrees at Concordia University, and I worked in Canada. I became a Canadian citizen, and I've been working for Concordia University as an international student recruitment officer for over 8 years. So I'm very happy to share my experiences with you today. We actually have so do ask me questions at the end after my presentation. So I'm going to share with you my presentation right now. So I hope you can see. Okay, this is the slides.
Yeah, we can see it. You're
Okay.
putting full screen mode, right? Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, awesome. Yes. So just so you know, I do have a colleague who's in charge of the recruitment events in India. She's unfortunately not available at this moment. So I'm very happy to speak to you on her behalf. So at the end, I will also share with you her contact details. So feel free to contact her if you have further questions. So in general, I'm going to talk about some education, higher education in Canada. As you know, Canadian is very friendly, and we are very happy. We consider ourselves one of the best destination for international students in the world. So I'm not sure how many of you have been to Canada in the past, but I'm just going to share briefly the Canadian geographic, geography, basically. Okay, I just wait. I'm sorry. I hope. Oh yeah, there's a bit lag just between my presentation, the slides, and while I'm speaking. So I hope you can all bear with me. So where is the Canada? Let's all start with the basics. So basically Canada, there is a direct flight. Okay, There is a direct flight from Canada to, between Toronto, the largest city in Canada, to the capital of India, New Delhi. So it's about 14 hours direct flight. So we are actually not far from Toronto. It's Montreal, which is the second largest city in Canada, and it's about 1 hour flight from Toronto. So you get a bit sense of where Canada is. Of course, it's in North America, okay, perfect. So Canada is consisted of basically consist of 10 provinces as well as 3 territories. So we are, as I speak, we're located in the largest province, which is Quebec, and there are a lot of universities in all 10 provinces actually, from coast to coast. So you might have heard some universities in British Columbia, like UBC, so University of British Columbia. There's also a lot of institutions in Ontario. In Quebec, you might hear a fewer institutions, as we are a province. We are a province of French heritage. So that's why Canada is actually a country of 2 languages, 2 official languages, French and English. There are most of actually higher educational institutions in Quebec are French. However, Concordia University, we are one of the 3 English institutions in Quebec. So we offer our programs in English only. So that's why we're very unique. And other universities most universities in Ontario and in other parts of Canada are in English. So there are about 100, around 100 higher educational institutions like universities in Canada, and over 90% of us are public. So which is a bit different than our southern neighbor, the States. So we have most of our education, our institutions are public universities. So we do have 4 distinctive seasons, and you will definitely see snow in Canada because it's in the north. So we are expecting snow, but you can also see all other 4 seasons actually. There's some key facts about Canada. We are a smaller country compared to India, and compared to our southern neighbor, of course. So we have only about 37 million people, but one of the 5 people in Canada, are actually immigrants from other parts of the world. So we do consider us a cultural mosaic, if you may, or a melting pot, many people say. So we do have a diverse culture. Like myself, I am of Chinese origin. I have colleagues from Africa, from Europe, from different parts of the world, who actually run, the recruitment efforts in the respective regions. And in Canada, about 1.5 million are of South Asian origin. In total, about 6 million are from Asia. So that actually makes about 17% of all Canadians. And 1.5 million South Asian people are, immigrants or international students together. So that makes about 5% of the entire Canadian population. So that actually is a large percentage. So you will not be alone. If you come to Canada to study, you will feel like you're surrounded by, your own, you have the own culture, you have the, experience of your own, heritage, which is very good. And it's also very helpful. And Canada, we are a very peaceful and stable democracy in the world, recognized by the UN. And we established in, the country is actually over 150 years old. So since 1867. So we are a very old democratic country. And over actually 200 different languages are actually spoken in Canada. Among them, 2 official languages, English and French. So about 75% of the population are English speaking, like originally English speaking, mother tongue is English, and about 25% of the population are, of French mother tongue. So this is just a bit background of the demographics, and there are typically 3 reasons why you should choose to come to study in Canada. First of all, our universities, our post-secondary education are among the best in the developed countries, or in the OECD countries, which is recognized by this organization. So we have one of the highest rate of adult population with a post-secondary education degree. And we are also very consistent in high quality education in all provinces throughout all the 10 provinces and 3 territories. This is because our education are actually ministered by the provincial government. So we don't have a federal Ministry of Education. Instead, we have our own, it depends on what the province you are in. We have our own provincial Ministry of Education, and most of our schools, like I said earlier, most of our universities are public funded. So we do have the fund to help increase the education, to improve the education quality. So 90% of our universities are public funded. And about the tuition, the living standard and the cost, this is something you should also consider choosing to come to Canada. Most of our universities are very affordable because they are public institutions. So tuition on average, you can expect to pay about 20,000 Canadian per year. Of course, depending on which institution you attend, sometimes the number can vary, but most of our universities are public funded, like I mentioned. So the tuition will not be, compared to our southern neighbors, they will not have a huge tuition. And there are other fees like, transportation, meals, books, and supplies. On average, you're expected to pay about 35,000 Canadian dollar per year for the living and the tuition, living expense and tuition, which is considered a very good, affordable amount for international students. And this is an example of how friendly our, how Canadian people are actually. So in Canada, you will always see people say thank you all the time, and I'm sorry if you bump into people by accident, if you ever step on other people's toe or just run into someone by accident, you will always hear I'm sorry, because in Canada, people are very polite and they like to treat everyone equally. So this is the RCMP officer, which is the Royal Mountain police officer, who's like a royal, like the federal police officer who actually take kids to an event to teach them how to walk safely. And this applies to international students as well. We have tons of support for our international students, both on and off campuses. And the third reason I think international students should choose to come to Canada to study is because we offer a lot of experiential learning opportunities for our students. So a good example is Waterloo University, for example, in Ontario, in Waterloo. They actually have they have the initiative. They actually started the initiative of the so-called co-op education, cooperative education. So they work with employers around the world to help students establish a very solid education model. So over actually, there's a study, I think over 5,200, so 5,200 employers hire Waterloo's students to do co-op, which is paid internship throughout the years, and they are very renowned. Their programs are really worldwide renowned for that. And I think not just Waterloo, actually, us, Concordia, we also offer tons of programs that have co-op features. So this is essentially, a key feature for a lot of Canadian institutions, where you can actually gain paid internship experiences over the 4 year or 5 years of your study. And once you graduate, you will have full-time work experience, which will help you either go back to your country to find jobs or stay in Canada to immigrate or look for jobs. So this is something we actually think Canadian university have the edge to attract international students. And we also have different types of scholarships for international students. Like sometimes there's the entrance scholarships, which is available for all international students as long as you apply to the university. Most of universities offer that. There's also some private run scholarships that you can apply to. Most of them are on merit-based scholarships that you should just provide with your transcript, and sometimes there's the extracurricular activities that are required, which I can go a bit further when I talk about Concordia's examples. But make sure you check out different scholarships available from the particular institutions you're applying to. Okay, so, and also a very friendly, student-friendly visa and immigration policies in Canada. So generally speaking, after you graduate from a recognized post-secondary institution, like Concordia, you're applicable to apply for a 3-year work permit after you graduate. So after you graduate from institutions like Concordia, you are able to stay in Canada and look for jobs for up to 3 years. And after 3 years, or within the 3 year of working, staying in Canada, you might want to immigrate. So you could also apply to immigrate in Canada, and there are different immigration policies, which I'm not going to go over, but different provinces have their own rules to attract students. For example, Quebec, if you have some knowledge of French, there's a express way to immigrate. And in Ontario or in other provinces, I think if you have work experience, which you might gain from the paid internship, or after you graduate, you find a job, you get a 6 months or 1 year experience, then you apply to immigrate, and there's a fast track process. So this one, basically, all these are the aim is to attract international students to stay and to call Canada home. So this is something we are very proud of, because we are a country made of immigrants like myself. I applied to immigrate and after my study, and then became a Canadian citizen later. So basically, talking about admission requirements, you really need to look at individual institutions, but in general, we look at academic performances. It is very important. So mainly your high school grades, of course, depending on what curricular curriculum you're pursuing, the admission requirements can vary, can be different. In general, most universities in Canada do not ask for SAT or ACT, but we do require English proficiency if English is not your mother tongue, or if you don't have you cannot prove that you can waive the English proficiency test, which I'm going to go over also a little bit further once I have the Concordia example. And application deadlines usually varies, but depends on the institution. In general, for the fall admission, usually it's somewhere between like February till can be sometimes in March. It really depends on the institution. But usually, let's say, for example, if you would like to apply to enroll in a university next fall, next September, most applications are available online. Sometimes from September, sometimes from October this year, until next January. Sometimes some universities have like deadlines like in January, some universities have deadlines in March. So usually from the fall terms to the spring terms, you have about 4 months to prepare an application, to submit everything online, and your application will be reviewed. Once you get an offer in general, you get a PDF document which you can use to help you apply for the study permit. But in Quebec, it's a bit different because Quebec, we are, like I said, we are mainly French. That's why the education policy is also a bit different. There is a requirement on the CAQ, which is an extra step that you have to apply to get a document before you can apply for a study permit. So this is just an extra thing that I like to mention, but most applications are done via the online system. It's only Ontario, the province of Ontario, that they have their own application system, which is the OUAC, the Ontario University Admission, I think it's application center, yeah. So which you can use and apply for different universities in Ontario. But other universities in other provinces, most of them have their own application via their own website. So this is a bit information about the application. So here are some resources which you can either take a screenshot or, as I know, Richa is taking, it's recording everything. So this is something you can share with parents, students, guidance counselors later. Those are official information from the Canadian government about immigration policies or anything about entry requirements, especially given the pandemics going on. You can refer to those websites like the Citizenship and Immigration Canada, or the education, the Ministry of Education of the different local governments and the Council of Higher Education. You can find the information about all universities in Canada. So roughly there are about around 100 universities, and the 90% are public. Of course, there are some colleges and private institutions, but roughly they're the numbers are actually quite small compared to our southern neighbor, US, where you can find thousands of universities there. All right. So the next 10 minutes or so, I will talk about Concordia, which is also a public institution, public English institution located in Montreal, Canada, the second largest city. Used to be the largest city in terms of the economic power and the population, but it was surpassed by Toronto in the 70s. So Montreal is also located in the east part of Canada, in the largest province of Quebec. You can tell from the pictures, it's a very attractive city. It's actually just ranked by there's a ranking just came out recently by QS. It's top 10 in the world. I think it was number 10 in the world and the number 1 in North America. It's tied with Boston, I believe, and definitely number 1 in Canada for the best student destination. Oh, sorry, best study destination or best student city, if you may. The first picture, on the top left corner, it's the downtown view from the Mount Royal, the Royal Mountain, where we get our name, Montreal, which is a Latin name standing for Royal Mountain. And of course, it's a city, people are city of hockey, ice hockey. So, people are actually, this is the almost the national sports of Canada or, of Montreal. And there's different festivities all year round. And you can find many information about Montreal later if you Google the city. So I'm not going to go over too much about the city, but it is among the best student cities in the world because they consider, first of all, the education quality of the institutions there. So we have 4 universities in Montreal, 2 French universities and 2 English ones. So the 2 English ones are McGill and Concordia. So of course, McGill is, you might have heard of McGill before. It's also one of the best universities in the world. Concordia, we are also ranked among the best 500 universities in the world. So that's why, Montreal is considered a place with many good institutions. The other 2 French universities, of course, they are also very, highly ranked. So the other thing about Montreal is we are quite affordable, which means, international students, you don't really have to pay a lot to study here. I'll just give you an example. When I was renting, in downtown, my apartment cost me about 600 Canadian dollar per month, just the rent in the city like Montreal. That was like 10 years ago. Right now it's about 800 a month for Canadian dollar for like an apartment, or you call it like a 1 bedroom, 1 living room apartment in downtown area. So it's quite affordable, and also the public transportation is very it's very easy to transfer everywhere in the city. It's like for full-time students, it's about $50 Canadian dollar per month. Okay, so a lot of things are actually quite friendly for students. The tuition I'm going to go over a bit later. It's also for an institution like Concordia, you're looking at about 23,000, 25,000 Canadian dollar per year. So Concordia University is a comprehensive university, which means we are, we have a lot of programs, like a very comprehensive university. It consists of over 200, programs at both undergraduate and graduate level. So we have programs offered in 4 faculties. We have the business school, we have the Faculty of Arts and Science, the Faculty of Fine Arts, as well as the School of Engineering and Computer Science. So over, over 200 programs, different, choices for you to combine your, you can combine your major, you can do a major and combine it with, a minor in different, across the 4 different faculties. And we have also 2 campuses located in the city of Montreal. And both campuses are actually in the city. One is in the downtown core. So it's like the city center, Sir George Williams campus. And the other one is only 20 minutes away if you take a shuttle bus free of charge to Loyola, which is also in the city. It's just a very quiet suburban, not suburban, but neighborhood, like a residential neighborhood, as compared to the city center, which is very urban and a lot of things going on. Okay, the differences between the 2 campuses, obviously, it's actually different majors, different programs are offered on each campus. So the downtown campus, we have the School of Business, we have the Computer Science and Engineering School. We have also most of the fine arts programs offered on this campus. The Loyola campus is mainly the the science, the chemistry, physics, where it require the labs, which the programs require the labs, then it's on this campus. Another feature about Concordia University, as many other Canadian universities are proud of, is the experiential learning opportunities for all students. So you have the exchange programs. We offer exchange with over 100, over 150 institutions across 35 countries. We also have the volunteer program. If you don't find internship or you don't find co-op, you can also join the volunteer program, which help you gain experience through volunteering in a mostly local organization in Montreal. There's also research opportunities for undergraduate students. So you can work for a professor, with a professor, with some, graduate students as an undergraduate student. There's also the co-op. You can look for jobs, usually in the third or the fourth year of your study, and get again experience. Usually the co-op terms is alternated with the learning terms, with the school term. So if you come to, if you are part of the co-op program, you will come to school to study for a term, is typically 4 months, and then go to the work term for 4 months, and then come back to school to finish your study to come back to school to do another 4 months study, and then go to look for another, work term. And the school will help you find those terms, co-op terms. It's typically 2 to 3 co-op terms. So altogether, you will gain about 12 months, which is a year full-time work experience. And there's also co-op opportunities on campus if you cannot find a company off campus. So there's a lot of our fine arts students, they actually find some opportunities on campus because we have art galleries, we have film festivals that they can actually use to help distribute or actually showcase their work. Okay, so I'm just gonna go quickly because of time constraints. There's the basically a lot of support for our students. Like many Canadian institutions do have, actually all Canadian institutions, as long as they have international students, they will have an office dedicated to the international students. So we call it International Student Office. And we also have student associations, student support. We give Student Success Center. That's a service that helps students to help them actually get used to the life in Montreal in university. There's financial aid and awards. They will help you find scholarships, of course. And the Hojo is basically how to find off-campus housing. And there's the job bank. There's also health services. So a lot of support for international students. So in terms of admission, I'll give you some examples of Concordia because each institution varies. For Concordia, we have our own online application. And when you apply, you can indicate up to 3 program choices. When we review that, we look at your first choice first. If that's admissible, then we stop looking at the second and the third. Some institutions, they might look at all 3 choices and they might give you 3, letters of admission, for example. But us, we just look at 1 and we will give you 1 letter of admission. So for example, if the first choice is not admissible, then we look at the second, and then the same thing. If the second is not admissible, we look at the third. Okay, and you can upload all documents via the internet, like in your English language proficiency. If you apply to a fine art program, you can upload your portfolio via the internet as well. So we accept transcripts, we accept English proficiency, everything we can, we can accept a scanned copy or so-called unofficial documents so that we can start the reviewing process. If you are admitted, we then require the official documents to send directly to Concordia via the issuing body, which is the test center or the school directly. Okay. Typically, the deadline for international students, most programs we have a deadline on February 1st, but actually all the programs stay open until March 1st. We just encourage international students to apply a month before the deadline, the official deadline, March 1st, because there's the requirement of CAQ, which is particular to Quebec, and also study permit. That takes some time. After you're admitted, you get your PDF letter of admission, which you can apply to, which you can use to apply for the CAQ and study permit online as well. That's typically what how the process goes. In terms of admission requirements, I'm not going to go through too much in details, but we accept like A level. If you go to the British system, if you go to the IB system, we accept IB. Typically, the minimum requirement is 26. Some competitive programs require 30, 35 or higher. If you go through the Indian national system, typically, the requirement is anywhere between C+ to A, but there's a conversion because if you're using the percentage, I think most of you are using the percentage, then we have the conversion. But in terms of English proficiency, if you can prove that you have you have met those requirements, you can be waived from the English proficiency. Otherwise, we typically look at the IELTS, TOEFL, or now Duolingo, which you can do from your home. So typically for direct admission with option, some English courses offered in year 1, we're looking at a minimum of 6 in IELTS. We also offer some conditional admission, which means our intensive language program prior to the start of your university study. So if your language is a bit weaker, then we can also accept you, but you need to do a full-time English program about a year before starting the university studies. Okay. Yeah, so I think time's up, and tuition is about this much, depending on the program, but you're looking at a range. And this is my colleague who you can contact in the future, should you have questions.
Thank you so much, Fan. People already do have a lot of questions, and hope you have time to answer some of them.
I do. Sorry about taking a bit longer.
Fan, it was very interesting. I learned a lot, frankly, about both about Montreal and about Concordia. Of course, your presentation of what Canada offers is, of course, very exciting, and it's absolutely true in terms of the opportunities for Indian students that shows in the increasing applications to Canada every year. So, a couple of questions here. One is a gentleman, a person asking about the scope of biotechnology in Canada. Would you have a view of, whether biotechnology research, and there are a lot of biotechnology companies in Canada or not?
Yes, of course. So we do have like a health program, or actually science program in the field, biotechnology, biochemistry, anything in those fields, we do offer this program. In Concordia, there's also other universities offer this program. In terms of the industry, Montreal is a big city with many opportunities. So we have large companies like Pfizer. They have their research labs. They have their operations in Montreal. There's pharmaceutical companies as well. A lot of famous ones in Montreal, like I mentioned Pfizer. This is a big one. There's many others operating in Montreal. in Toronto, in those three big cities like Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver for sure, and some smaller cities. In Canada, since the population is a bit smaller, but since we're very close, population is smaller, but we are very close to the States. That's why a lot of multinational corporations, they like to set up their operations in Canada because of its closeness to the States, and also the English education and the very close mindset to the States. So you can find many opportunities.
Wonderful, Fan, absolutely. And I think that for STEM areas in general, Canada, opportunities in Canada are expanding. Someone's asked for the scope of criminal justice in Canada. I believe, Fan, if I'm not mistaken, that to study law, you would first need to finish an undergraduate course and then apply for law. Would you be aware of that?
Yes, in Canada, this is the case. So law schools are actually, you need to do another test, like the States, you pass a law school admission test and you go enrolled in a law school in Canada. Concordia, we do not have a law school. So, but you can do, like in Canada, most schools, in undergraduate level, you can do a program, in humanities, or in science, or in like a business. You can enroll in a program and then apply to law school. For criminal justice in particular, there are some schools in Canada you can find such program. I believe there's like a Guelph University, some universities in Ontario, you can find this program. We do not offer such particular program, but depends on what you want to do. Like some universities offer this program either maybe in their undergraduate level. But like you said, you're right, 100%. If you would like to practice law, you will have to go to law school, which is not available in the undergrad.
Thank you for that, Fan. So here there's a question that you spoke about fine arts. Does Concordia offer design and fine arts courses as well?
Yes. Design, we have the fine arts program. So in the Faculty of Fine Arts. Finance, yes, finance is in the business school. So in Concordia, we do have this program. If you would like to find such programs in other universities, I believe most universities will have finance for sure. But design really depends, because not all universities have design program. There are some.
I think they meant fine arts and design. So
sorry, fine arts. Sorry, I thought it was for finance. Yes, fine arts. We do have fine arts and design program. We are actually #2 in Canada and top 100 in the world in the terms of the fine arts design program. But not all institutions in Canada offers fine arts. Sorry.
Right, Fan, no problem. So there's another question here about, actually this is relevant to a lot of people. It says, do STEM undergraduates find appropriate or relevant STEM jobs in Canada? Or I think the question is, how easy is it to find a job if you have a STEM major?
STEM major, it depends, because the fundamental programs like mathematics or these engineering programs, in general, the job prospects, are actually quite favorite. You have those are favorite programs to find jobs. There's the in terms of engineering, really it depends on what program, what engineering. I would say in Montreal it's the software engineering, industrial engineering, and mechanical engineering. Those are very easy programs. Those are programs that are I would say easier to find jobs as compared to maybe civil, because civil really it's something different, I would say. But we do offer these programs. But I would say in Montreal, the city, because we have a lot of investment in artificial intelligence, in computer science. So I would say software engineering, industrial, mechanical, computer engineering as well. But in general, STEM programs are those for international students are easier to find jobs for sure.
Right. Great, Fan. So that's a good one. Here, there's a question from Amish saying that from the study perspective, should students apply at the undergrad level or the graduation level, keeping in mind the long-term objective of working in Canada?
I would say if you have a degree in the undergrad level and then you would like to pursue something similar to what you study in the undergrad, then I would say go for the grad studies. But if you would like to change, what you study, like if you want to switch from, a business to other, domain, then I would say pursue an undergrad. So I've seen like a lot of Indian students applying from India. They apply to our engineering programs because they have done undergrad in engineering and they apply to the respective engineering postgraduate degree. So I've seen a lot of people do that. So I would say if you have background in engineering and you would like to pursuing a grad degree, that's probably the best way, the easiest way, rather than pursue another 4 or 5 years engineering degree. And we do have a lot of grad students in engineering in Concordia from India, and they I think most of them they find good opportunities after they study.
Right. Finally, let me see. It says, so this question actually I think comes more from the COVID year, that it says the deadline is Feb 1st, taking into consideration what you showed earlier, but we don't get a high school scores till June or March. And this year in the COVID year, students have just about got their high school scores in late July and early August. So are there two different admission cycles, or what accommodation does the university make for them? That really would be our last question, because I think we are coming to an end of the session.
No problem. So this is a very good question. So if you have any interim grades, like before your final grades becoming available, you can really provide us with your grade 10, 11, and the first term of your grade 12 grades, and then we can make a decision based on those. So we don't really have to wait for your final grades to be available. We can give you a conditional offer if everything meets our requirements, and then we will put in the condition that your final grades have to stay, above a certain, threshold.
Right. So that's. I'm just seeing if there's anything else. I think we've more or less answered most questions. Okay, one last one. This is the last fan. Is
Okay,
that
no worries.
can undergraduate students get or apply for scholarships?
Yes, we do have a page dedicated to scholarships. So basically, everything is automatically considered if you apply to Concordia. So everyone who applied to Concordia will be considered for the entrance scholarship. It is based on your high school performance only. But there are other types of scholarships for international students. The two most popular ones are the Presidential Scholarship and the International Scholar Award. So these are available for our students, undergraduate students, mostly, if they apply to our undergrad studies. For grad students, when they apply, most research-based programs have scholarship, or you can get scholarships from the professor who hire you. But for undergrad programs, there are some scholarships you have to apply individually, and they might ask for, besides your high school performance, they might ask you to write an essay and provide us with some extracurricular activities, things like that. But one thing that you don't really have to apply is the entrance scholarships. It's all automatic, and it's based on the ranking of all the students who apply to Concordia. So for example, students applying from Indian national curriculum, then we rank the applicants and based on their high school grades, and the top I would say 1% usually will get a scholarship. It depends on the program, but some program offer like 5,000 Canadian dollar per year. Some offers 10,000, up to 10,000.
Right. Got that. Wonderful. Great to know that, Fan, and thank you so much for all your time and for answering a lot of the questions. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll now take a long break and we'll be coming back in about 4 hours with our overview of UK, Germany and Ireland. Hope to see you there again. And thank you again, Fan. You can reach us or Fan Zang or Martin Walsh if you have any specific questions. We'll be happy to answer them for you. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Simran. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.